We're going to start with the big news this afternoon, and that is that Manchester City win their case against the Premier League. That is according to City's version of events. The Premier League have the two statements. They don't sound very similar. I want to go to Nobbins first on this, not only because he's a City fan, though, but because he is also legally trained. He is a trained, qualified solicitor. What's your interpretation of this win, and how significant for Manchester City do you believe this to be?
So I think that, first of all, we just need to establish this has no bearing on the 115 situation, because I know a lot of people have said, oh, this therefore means... No. Totally separate. Like, City could win on the APT and still lose on 115, so those things aren't correlated. This was as far as I could tell, this is a very multifaceted case where there was a lot of moving parts, and City were making a lot of arguments, which is what you do in these sort of things. You throw a lot, and you throw a lot at the wall, and you see what sticks. You only really need one of those things to stick to beat, to win the case, whatever terminology we want to use. And that's what City did. Specifically, it seems to be in relation to shareholder loans, how they weren't accounted for in the fair market value calculations. And there's, I guess, the biggest repercussions from like a Premier League perspective is that there will be now a question mark for City have potentially got a claim in respect to some damages, because what's quite funny is obviously City have the 115 charges against them, but it appears, based on the judgment, that the Premier League have broken two of their own rules in respect of delaying in terms of unreasonable delay. So 3 months for one of the transaction and then 2 months for the other one. So that suggests that maybe City will have a course of action in terms of getting a claim for damages, which is very interesting as well.
We saw that with the Chelsea situation with selling their hotels. It's meant to take 2 weeks, but they spent anywhere between 6 months to 12 months to officially sign that off. So it looks like they're doing it to multiple clubs.
Yes. So it's very that's very interesting. And it looks like City might have a genuine case there, because there was a deal, it was on the table, it was ready to go, but then it couldn't get put over the line because of this undue delay. So yeah, it's really embarrassing, I think, for the Premier League, the fact that they've broken their own rules, that's really funny, and they've obviously ultimately lost this case. Now, have they lost all of the points? No. Is this the end of fair market value and APT? No, that's not what this case means. But the fact that there's even one, however minor the win you want to label it as, it is a very big win for City, and it might even just be more of like a sort of like a moral thing, just to illustrate, look, we can go to the Premier League and we can actually prove that you've breached your own rules, and we can beat you in the court. So it's a really weird situation. I didn't think City were going to win, to be honest. I thought this was like a Hail Mary, see what happens. So this is staggering, to be honest.
Does this kind of give you some... Sorry to go off. Sorry. Does this give you confidence going into the 115 case, the fact that you have kind of not exposed the Premier League, but the fact that they've broken two of their rules and regulations kind of makes them look a bit crap, doesn't it? Do you think that would give... I know it's a completely different case. There's a lot of evidence. There's a lot of, hearsay, thearsay. Do you think that will give City give them confidence, going into the 115 court case?
I think it probably gives me more confidence, to be fair, because it just has sort of exposed the Premier League as quite inept in that respect. Like, who would have thought they would have broken their own rules? It's like you can't even write this level of comedy. It's really funny how incompetent they apparently are, that you can't even follow their own rules. So if that's happened here, and if that's all been hushed, and if that's all been like rushed and that sort of thing, then maybe there will be no crossover in terms of similar errors in respect to that other case. As we've established, there is no link. But yeah, I guess as a City fan who obviously wants their club to win both matters, I think it can only be seen as a positive thing. Yeah, 100%. Even if it has no direct bearing.
Yeah, it's very interesting as well, as you say, reading it. There's some the left-hand side here, you can see part of what City have released. Things like the Premier League were found to have abused their sort of the dominant position. The tribunal found that both the original APT rules and the current amended ATP rules violate the UK competition law and violate the requirements of prudential fairness. Also goes on then you've got the other side, which is the Premier League, who turn around and go, the Premier League welcomed the tribunal's findings, which endorsed the overall objectives, framework, and decision-making of the APT system. The tribunal upheld the need for the ATP system as a whole and rejected the majority of City's challenges. Moreover, the tribunal found that the rules are necessary in order for the league's financial controls to be effective. The tribunal did, however, identify a small number of discrete elements of the rules which do not, in their current form, comply with the competition and public law requirements. And I think what's really interesting about reading this is, I mean, again, depends on everybody's interpretations of what's going on here. I think the one thing it says to me is this idea that from tomorrow the rules are going to be thrown out because they're completely unlawful at every level, and suddenly Newcastle could sponsor their own shirts and pay themselves £2 billion a year, and they can go and they're not only going to buy Mbappe, they're just going to buy Real Madrid and make them their feeder club. That's not, I think a lot of people, with the way some of the media outlets reported on this case, is that could happen if City win. And Mark Goldbridge actually did a video about this the other day, stating that it looks more like if anything does happen, it's going to be some minor changes that will definitely help the Newcastles and Cities and other teams. I think like Man United are probably going to benefit from this. Ineos want to pump more money in. Ineos are a very wealthy organization, so they'll probably welcome some relaxing of these rules. But it doesn't appear that there's suddenly going to be this onslaught where clubs can spend whatever they want, be sponsored by whomever they want. There still has to be a market value element. There still has to be a compliance. And I think that's right, because at the end of the day, no disrespect to like, if Newcastle's owners can start spending what they want, even City will be dwarfed, because the difference in money is ridiculous. I think City's owners are worth like about 20 billion. Then it goes to Man United's owners, and then it's these guys on 600 billion. Like there is they make everybody else's owners. I think they're as rich as every other owner put together. So again, Newcastle fans will want to be able to spend all of that, but honestly, it's crazy when you get into that sort of realm. So it needs to exist. The interesting fallout from this, though, actually can impact Arsenal, because there's now talk that that shareholder loans are now going to be looked at. And at the moment, shareholder loans, a lot of them are interest-free, essentially. The owners of the football club can lend the football club money, and in many cases, they don't have to pay it back, or it's interest-free. There is talk that this now may change, and the reports are now suggesting that Premier League clubs with high levels of borrowing are now in danger of breaching profit and sustainability rules. Now, for Man United, who've got loads of lending, that's not an issue. We already pay interest on our loans. Like, nothing will change for us. But in this report, it says that Arsenal have £200 million made up entirely of shareholder loans, which means that if these rules change and suddenly interest is payable upon these loans, even at small rates, if it has to be at market value, it will have to echo what commercial banks would lend £200 million out for. So, Giuseppe, there could be some financial implications here for Arsenal off the back of a case that you weren't even involved with. You're muted. Just like your bank balance.
Everyone said it at the same time, and my ears just like mute. And I was like, no. To be honest, I think it's crazy, man. I think like I personally think sometimes when rule changes happen with stuff like this, it should be from like this point onwards. I don't think anything before this should ever be affected. Like, so be it, Arsenal have them loans. I don't think interest should have to be paid on them if you've done it when the rules stated that you could. I think that should just be chalked off, and it said I think it should be more like any loans from now on must have this. That's how I think it should be, but that's probably not what it will be. Maybe that's why, as we said, that Arsenal didn't spend the way we thought we'd spend before the season, because obviously all the legal teams must have known about these court cases and what were being asked and what were being changed, and if that gets changed, this gets affected. So maybe that answers questions. For me, I don't think it's anything for Arsenal fans to be worried about. I think that we'll have enough to sort that out and do what we have to do. Maybe it just means we can't spend as much for the next year or so. But yeah, I don't know. I think sometimes I think like how they change one rule, they need to just come with rules, and it's just the rules. There's too much nitpicky stuff, like with the City stuff that they've just won. now it's implementing, it's now getting involved in other rules. It just doesn't really make sense. That changing that, changing that, changing that. It's just going to mess a lot of clubs up.
And so Boston here says wild and unsubstantiated accusation, Terry. I mean, I'm not making the accusation. It's being reported by the Times, being reported by the Independent. I'm only what we know for a fact is that you have around £200 million of shareholder loans. It's on your trading accounts, which is public information. This is not I want to just explain something to people. This isn't Arsenal not being accused of breaking rules like City are being accused of the 115. There are still people out there that think that, that the Leicesters and the Evertons and the Forest have been punished and points deducted. They think those cases are similar to what City are being accused of. They honestly, when Man United got a fine from UEFA for a breach, that isn't for trying to circumvent and cheat their way through the rules, as City have been accused of. This would potentially be a problem, because it may mean if Arsenal suddenly have to pay 50 to 60 to 70 million pound a year in interest charges, with their current turnover and profitability, they may go over a level. The likelihood of them suffering the same consequences as City if they're found guilty are not the same whatsoever. So it's really weird looking at the comments. I still think, again, most people saying this are individuals that still believe that net spend is real, I suppose. That's the problem we have here. It's the net spend mob that think that's how football works. But sorry, back to you, Giuseppe.
Yeah, it's also not really an accusation in the sense of like, it's not that no one's accusing Arsenal of doing anything. They're just saying with these new rules, it's now going to affect Arsenal going forward because Arsenal have got these loans and now they're going to have to be paying back. And I just think I don't even think it will even breach the things say. I think it will just mean that we can't spend as much. Like we're going to be bordering it for a little bit until we get some players, maybe sell some more players and stuff. Yeah, listen, I ain't worried as Arsenal fans. I think all these rule changes and that, obviously, when it comes to money, there's so many little intricate parts and stuff to it all, and that's why you see like when Chelsea are spending all this money and stuff, and people are like, how? It's because we don't really understand. A lot of people don't understand how it works. Like they're obviously not breaking the rules. There's money coming in and out, etc. But yeah, I think it's frustrating. It's frustrating as an Arsenal fan because it's like we're competing with City in that, and now they've brought out a rule that's going to allow they're amending or changing a rule that's now going to allow City to go and spend even more money, and in the same breath take money out of the pocket of Arsenal to go and spend money. So it's like kind of a bit like,
that's what you get for circumventing the rules and your owners paying yourself for shareholder loans. Outrageous. Dock Arsenal 12 points, I reckon. Outrageous behaviour. How dare you pay yourself? Yeah?
How dare we abide by the rules
Outrageous.
that were set in place? Yeah, but it's. I think it's been. But I think football is so annoying. I don't know how you lot think. I think recent years football's become so like money around money, man. Like there's so much always talk about money. Back in the day, it used to be for the football and enjoy it. I know money's always been a part of the game, but like now it seems like FFP rules and all this. It's just too much. It's almost like money's
so
taking over.
Yeah, and you've got
off the pitch out of noise like that's coming in where he's just like, I just want to focus on my team play ball.
But that's all. But I think it's important for football fans to learn about the finances. It also leads to you being less angry when it comes to transfer windows. That's why I've got a big bugbear with net spend, because people look at net spend and I saw a Real Madrid fan on Twitter like in the summer going, why aren't we spending? Our net spend is low this summer. Why aren't we spending more? When Mbappe wasn't a low net spend, you moron. Just because the Sun newspaper says you got him for free, you didn't. He cost you between 2 to 300 million to bring in. He wasn't free. That's why there's no money left to buy other people. But I do get it. And listen, Arsenal may even come back and say, well, the media have misreported on these loans. There is interest being paid. It's paid in this way. And these things happen. Like the level of the complexity of the trading accounts of clubs the size of Man City, Arsenal, Liverpool, United, they're not easy to understand. Even some accountants will struggle to understand it because not every accountant operate in the same way. But the thing is, I can't see Arsenal getting into much trouble over it. I can't see, let's say a new rule comes in. Maybe they are paying interest, but they're told it's under market value. I don't know. And they're told they've got to increase it. And they've got to pay capital back each year. And suddenly it's costing them 20 odd million and they slightly breach. I can't imagine the Premier League saying, because we changed the rule that we should never have implemented in the first place, and that's now lead to you slightly breaching, we're going to deduct you 10 points. That's the thing here. I think sort of calm needs to be applied around this. But look, it's certainly going to be interesting to see how all of this kind of settled down. But it does show one thing: when all those Arsenal fans in the summer, we don't have FFP problems, the club's lying, we should be spending more money. Maybe they just knew something like this was coming, and they wanted to make sure they were in an okay position. They didn't want to overspend. They didn't want to put you in a vulnerable position in case something. Because again, they would have known that they would have an idea of what may or may not happen because their lawyers are of a higher level. They would have looked at the potential pitfalls for if City win, City lose, the Premier League win, Premier League loses, and what that may mean for them. So I think, again, if you don't trust your owners, if you don't like your football club, I understand why you're skeptical. But like I said in the summer, to all the people that praise the Cronkies now, praise Arteta, praise Edu, it just struck me as weird that, again, you just didn't quite get what you wanted, and it was straight to throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Like, keep your powder dry a little bit. Again, if you trust them. If you don't, it makes complete sense why you would call them out. But
do you know what, Giuseppe? You must be happy you didn't get that striker now. Then you would have been sweating right now.
If we got what? Sorry.
If you got the striker, you must be happy you didn't get the striker now. Could you be sweating?
Well, it depends how you look at it, because you win the league, you get more money, right? You start winning stuff, you get more money. So at the same time, it might have been a catch. Listen, at the end of the day, with the transfer window and stuff, I was gutted. I didn't rate it as highly. I thought we needed more, but I'd said at the beginning of the season, win the league and it doesn't matter anymore. Win the league and we don't care what the summer transfer window was. No one be talking about striker or not. And even how Kai Havertz has started this season, maybe they've got more faith in him than we need to give a bit more faith to him as well. But yeah, I still want a striker though.
I think that based on like what I've read so far, if you're a Newcastle fan, you've got to be absolutely fuming because these APT rules came in. What was it? Was it 2021 or something? And at the time, the Premier League were like, no, it's nothing to do with the fact that Newcastle have just been taken over. If you look at the emails in this document, it's like 3 or 4 days after the takeover, they're talking about, right, guys, we need to get these rules locked in now. It's like, it's just unbelievable, like the amount of it's clearly a targeted situation, and it's something that they denied, but it's so obviously the case, and it just sort of like puts everything else into question in terms of like what the Premier League are saying is the reality. But again, if you have to look at what is said in this judgment, if I was a Newcastle fan, I'd be fuming.
Yeah, no, listen, I agree. I mean, and equally, if you're the other side of this, and you back again, even the owners of that football club, some of them are really successful billionaire business men and women. They're not legally trained. The broadness, the base of the rule, you probably agreed with, but you expect the rule makers to legally have their rules challenged to make sure they're uptight and upstanding, and you all agree to them, because there'll be some that will sit there now and say, well, we still agree with the basis of the rule, but you've abused it so much, or you've got it wrong so much that now it can't be implemented, and that's going to damage us. And that's happened in loads of like corporate cases where you got like PPI as an example. PPI wasn't deemed a bad product. It was the banks essentially lost their court case and then have not been able to sell it since because they got greedy and put interest upon it. Yeah, some people were lied to that they had it, but in terms of it as a actual product, it worked, if that made sense. But because the banks got greedy, stuck interest on top of it, that was I remember working in the industry at the time, that was like the deciding factor which won the consumers the court case. But what it's actually led to since then is millions of people borrowing billions of pounds completely unprotected. So if something does go wrong in their life, they're in trouble. So it can often, through abuse of a position, which is what City have claimed here, you can end up putting people in vulnerable positions as well. So it's really not a good look for the Premier League. I couldn't agree more with you on what you said earlier, Nobbins.